My name is Dave Franza. I have a company that I'm founder and president of called TipLinks, and my goal is to integrate technology, ideas, and people. That's where the tip comes from, and links is a play on words. I worked with NFL Films for 31 years. I was director of IT, senior director of IT, CIO, and then vice president of product application development and support for NFL Films and the NFL Network once we brought them on board in 2003. I've had my own firm for about a year and a half, and I'm working with a couple of startups on some interesting projects. I work with SVG, the Sports Video Group in New York. Marty Porter's here, and Paul's here as well. Ed Delaney, I think, is representing them as well. I'm on the sports content management committee with them, have been for many years, on helping broadcasters and leagues develop better ways of capturing and archiving and processing and disseminating content. That's really my bailiwick. I built all those tools for NFL Films over the years, and they're still using them. One of the things that Marty asked me to come out and talk a little bit about AI and ML, and not so much captioning. I can certainly talk to that, but one of the things where I really got into AI and ML was with interviews, and all the interviews that NFL Films does. They shoot about, now I'll go through some of this. Obviously, you don't have to read the eye chart here, but this came up in 2017, so fairly recently. I was there until the end of 2017. I had been looking at ways to auto-transcribe interviews that NFL Films shoots for probably 2 or 3 years, and hadn't really come up with a cost-effective, efficient way to do it, certainly not an automated way to do it. They interview content captured between 65 and 2017, when we found something that we thought might work. It was about 19,000 hours of interviews, video and audio interviews. And they recently do currently about 400 to 600 hours per year. How to transcribe all of that, the speech to text, and create metadata that then could be imported into the MAM that we had built was really the challenge. We had a very sophisticated MAM and archival system that we built in the mid-90s that they're still using today. It's been migrated several times to new platforms, but one of the things we had not built into it, beside all the game footage, locker room footage, wires on the field, was all the interview process. We had one person working part-time, about 20 hours a week, as a second part of her full-time job, who was manually transcribing interviews. She was probably doing about 20 hours a week of the 400 to 600 per. She was maybe doing 80 hours a year out of the 400 to 600. The archives were stored on 16 millimeter film. They shot on film until about 6 years ago. And then a lot of interviews are on DVC Pro tape. And then also currently there are digital files on servers. The person who was doing it was, like I said, doing maybe 20 hours per week, pretty much based on a project basis. She would do the transcription, and the producer would work with that, but it wasn't really getting everything done. We were getting it into our MAM for what she was doing in a question and answer format. She was transcribing it. We were building a database, a metadata database, tying it to the time code, allowing producers to search in our MAM based on either the question or the answer or the subject being interviewed or any number of things they wanted to search on. But it was very limited in terms of what we had in our storage in the MAM. So what we wanted to do was really automate the whole speech-to-text process and build a learning index because, I'll talk about this a little bit more, but the other thing was mapping out the priorities. How and when were we going to do it? How much could we do on an automated basis even? And we went with a last in, first out, everything current. We wanted to get transcribed automatically, and then also based on specific projects, and then go back through the archives. That was kind of the roadmap that we defined. As the head of the operation in terms of our MAM and our content production and research and archival system, I really had to define our internal processes, develop our production workflows, and how we were going to automatically integrate the speech-to-text transcription into our MAM to make it easily searchable by everybody at NFL Films and the NFL Network on their editing stations. So we did that. As I said, I looked into this for about 3 years. I was at NAB for 3 years, every year, looking for different things. I tried several different vendors. I won't tell you who we used here, you know, but if you want to talk to me afterwards, I can certainly talk about it. So we selected a vendor, and you know, it was really looking at their software, their transcription engines, what kind of engineering support did they have. We knew that we were going to write a lot of the software ourselves. We needed a strong API, or REST API, that we could integrate into our own software to make all this work. So we found that. We wanted AI and machine learning attributes. We wanted it to be able to take somebody, a player whose diction wasn't the best, or who had a heavy accent or a drawl or whatever it might be, and learn over time how to translate and transcript that person, and we found that. There are multiple cloud-based transcription engines out there. 350, I guess, is about the latest number that are available, and we found somebody who licensed, if not all of them, most of them, and was able to build a hybrid from all of those engines and really boil it down to 6 or 7 or 8 engines that match the type of sources that we had and the type of things we were looking to transcribe, and that was very helpful. It took us about 6 months to figure all this out and make it all work. We wanted a simple web interface for managing the file uploads and then the text downloads, because all the transcription was happening in the cloud. That's how their service works. You send them the files. We automated that process, and you get the text back, and we automated the ingest of that into our MAM. There were a lot of obstacles in doing this. The gentleman before me kind of talked about what some of those obstacles are in terms of getting accurate transcriptions. The interviews were very different in quality. There was no real standard. A lot of companies that do this particular one does all the CNN news broadcasts. Well, those people are professionals. They're in a professional production environment, sitting at a desk. They all have great diction, you know, very well educated. Not every football player in the National Football League is quite at that level, and certainly the environment, the production environments weren't either. So diction, volume, accents, dialects, surroundings, ambient noise were all issues. The person being interviewed with our workflow, our process, had a microphone, you know, on them. The person doing the interviewing did not. The volume levels were different between the two. This was a big deal when we first started down this path, because the system that was doing the transcribing was having difficulty picking up and adjusting volume levels that were different between the two speakers. They really hadn't dealt with that before, because they were basically transcribing one person who was speaking. That was kind of a lemon that we came up with, but we ended up making lemonade out of that, and I'll tell you how we did that. We had already had somebody doing the manual transcribing, as I said, in a limited fashion. We determined we would do a question and answer type protocol, and so producers could look on either a question. They could look for something in either a question or an answer or both. There were a lot of different ways they could search. The person doing the transcribing obviously was able to say, this is a Q. There's the question. Here's an A for answer. Do the transcribing, and we would ingest that. It turned out we were able to determine who the question and the answer was by the different volume that we were getting. As long as they could pick up the lesser volume and transcribe it, that became the person asking the question. And it really ended up solving a big problem for us. As you go through the interview, you were able to tell based on the volume. In fact, we had to tell our audio guys, we don't want the volume better on the person asking the question. This is working out fine. So there were things like that that were very interesting. We worked on it over the spring and summer of 2017. By the 2017 season, we had it up and running. We uploaded daily automated MP4 files to the cloud and downloaded the transcriptions in an automated fashion once a day. Every night that happened. We used their API to control the ingest and the watch folders that we used to see that there were transcriptions coming in, ingest them into the MAM, and that's how we went about building our interview system in our Sabre MAM that we built. What I included here, because I'm starting to bore everybody likes to see video, we have a Phillips Rivers interview video that I was able to dig up. This is actually on the NFL Films' current Twitter feed. It's from March 2017 of Philip Rivers, and you'll notice when I play this that it is also closed captioned, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. And then I have a Philip interviews the actual transcript, the file, which is taken from a Word document that you'll see alongside the video. And you'll see our question and answer that was original. Now what happened is our transcriber, the manual one, had already transcribed this Philip Rivers interview. So we had her transcription there, question and answer. And then we were able to compare, and we did this for many, many videos that were already transcribed manually. We were able to compare the machine transcription to that and basically get it to a point over the course of the summer where it was about 90% accurate I would say, on most players, unless they were very, very non-understandable. And I'll show you those two things, and we'll take a look at, at what that looks like on the next slide. So here you've got the transcript on the left. If you can, it actually doesn't, it's not too bad up there. I can see it better up there. You can see the cue up top. So it's Philip Rivers, March 1st, 2017. So it's after the 2017 season. We were going to do a show on the best players from the 2017 season, which would be the following season. But we had interviewed him in March of 2017. And the person transcribing put the question up here. She keyed that in. She keyed this in. That's the answer. The smaller print is what we came back with later when we did the automated speech-to-text transcription. And I highlighted a couple things. We'll listen to them. Unlike Mr. Vogler, I actually have audio, so that'll make it a little bit easier to understand what he's saying here. So we'll play this. And this is the interview, and it's also got the closed caption at the bottom.
Von Miller, if not the best, is obviously one of the best defensive players in the league. Each week when you play a team, you circle a guy that you say, this guy can ruin the football game. And he's a guy that gets circled twice a year every time we play him, that he really can ruin a game because of his ability to, sack, fumble.
They go in. Oh, I didn't want to do that. So you can see there, just from what he said, that's the beginning of the interview. This is what the person had transcribed up top here, and this is what the machine came back with. And if you compare just those couple of sentences, it's pretty darn close. I mean, it got to a point where, like I said, it was 90, 95% accurate, particularly with somebody who speaks as well as Mr. Rivers does. If you look through the entire transcript, you'll see some differences in there, but not very many. So it's actually pretty impressive. I'll play the rest of it.
Von Miller, if not the best, is obviously one of the best defensive players in the league. Each week when you play a team, you circle a guy that you say, this guy can ruin the football game. And he's a guy that gets circled twice a year every time we play him, that he really can ruin a game because of his ability to, sack, fumble.
They didn't go in just for the sack. They went in for the strip.
He plays a run very well. We've had some words in the past, and he's gotten some good shots on me in the past, but he's one of those guys that you respect, and the guy you would love if he was on your side. You love going against the best, and he definitely is that. I think what makes him unique too is he's not just a speed guy. So like in this clip here, he'll go up and under as he does here. He throws in a spin move, and really against us over the years, I've grown to respect his every down ability. He's not a pass rusher. He is a football player. He stops the run. He plays hard every snap. He can wreck the game with his pass rush, and he'll go down one day as one of the best defensive players to play.
So there was an example there of him saying he repeated that a few times. There's some ums and some ahs in there, and those kinds of things get picked up with the automated transcription, and the person transcribing, the human who's doing it, is going to sift through those and kind of weed those things out, as Mr. Vogler said. But other than that, you can see that they're actually pretty close. And so that's what's happening there now. All their interviews are going up into the cloud once a day and as files and coming back as documents, text documents, and being ingested into the MAM. Here's where they determine the speaker, so they just give it a tag. Speaker F1 is the person asking the question, M1, I don't even know how they came up with that, I forget, but that's the person answering. But because of the difference in the volume in the interviews, question and answer, like I said, they were able to determine that and make those delineations between question and answer, which really helped us. So the next slide is actually this interview being used later when the show was done. So again, the interview was done in 2017 in March, before the 2017 season. It was transcribed manually. We then applied the automated transcription to it, and you'll see how between being able to search on the interview and things that were talked about, when Von Miller was picked as a player of the year for 2017, the producer who did the show was able to go back and look at all the interviews we had in the system where Von Miller was mentioned, or where Philip Rivers was talking, and several things that you'll see in this piece, specific things they were talking about. The producer was able to search on that in the interview, find the interview, and then use the same search criteria to find footage from the man to actually cut in footage that you didn't see in the initial interview. So we'll play a little bit of that. Yeah, I'm going to skip to where Philip Rivers is talking.
Come on, man. That's the question that everybody tries to figure out right now. How do you stop Von Miller?
People say,
Yeah.
he can wreck the game with his pass rush. Obviously one of the best defensive players in the league.
Year in, year out, you know that he's a pass rushing threat. You have to try and shut down Von Miller, and year in, year out, he gets double-digit sacks.
Put yourself in Von Miller.
Pulled down and almost lost the football. Von Miller.
This guy can ruin the football game. He gets circled twice a year every time we play him. One of those guys you respect, and a guy you would love if he was on your side. You love going against the best, and he definitely is that. He's gotten some good shots on me in the past.
And that is the 13th sack of Philip Rivers by Von Miller in his career.
He's not a pass rusher. He is a football player. He'll go down one day as one of the best defensive players to play.
So that's an example where the producer, the editor, was able to edit things out of the interview video or cut the video out and just show footage in the background. Between the ability to do that and also search and find footage that match the interview, that's how a lot of these things, and you turn around, obviously, programming a lot faster, make it a lot more interesting with this kind of a tool. So I just really wanted to say that, you know, it's out there. There are some tools out there that are doing the automated transcription and closed captioning. You know, web content accessibility. You know, we had to deal with closed captioning in NFL films based on FCC regulations, so it's no longer something, it's a nice thing to do. Fortunately, you have to do it. We have to go back even on things in the archive that have shown on television before, and we've got to put captions on them. So starting in 2012 through 2016, the FCC came up with deadlines that required broadcasters to closed caption all of their material at 3 different levels, whether it was live and near live video programming that had been shown on TV with captions, or pre-recorded video that was edited substantially for the internet, and if it was shown on TV with captions, or any video programming that the distributor already shows on the internet that hadn't been captioned. If you wanted to leave it there, you had to go back and caption it. So all those things are really broadcast rules now and law that must be followed. On the web content accessibility side, though, they're just guidelines. So I don't know how many people here have gone through the WCAG guidelines. Anybody? Can we get a show of hands who's read all that? All right, so just Google it. There you go. And it's pretty interesting. So the latest version is October 2018. The WCAG 2.1, and what they basically look at are 4 key principles of content focus, things that keep websites accessible and usable for all users. And they say the content must be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. They're the 4 major guidelines. And then there's pages and pages of detail on what all those things mean. But basically, if you look at what's in blue here, perceivable, content users should be able to use a screen reader or some other assistive technology to perceive the same information as a sighted user. Makes sense. Operable means that all links on the site should be clickable by keyboard commands and voice-operated systems, where using a mouse isn't an option. Understandable. Users must be able to understand the information as well as the operation of the user interface. The operation should be intuitive enough for disabled users to execute without extra guidance. And then robust. All functions and interfaces on the website should be compatible with assistive technologies, and accessible site content should evolve at the same pace as those tools. So this is a daunting task because the technologies are improving at different paces depending on what the technology is, and the task is to keep up with all of that on our websites and with all of our content. And with what I showed, you could see that on the Twitter feed, NFL Films has the content, it's captioned. That Phillip Rivers interview is captioned. The 2017 show, which is on YouTube right now, is not captioned. And I don't want to tell tales out of school, but it should be. So it's a daunting task keeping up with all this. And they're using Vitac, by the way. That's who NFL Films is using to do their captioning. It's all human captioning at this point, unfortunately. If I was still there, I think we had made some headway toward doing the automated captioning. But I think that's where everybody's going to go, and I think that's where it needs to be. So all disabled people get the same enjoyment or education or what have you out of the content as everybody else does. So that's my little spiel on some of the things we did at NFL Films and where AI and ML are in use and where we should be going with closed captioning and automated processes for the disabled.